Okay, so now we're going to get into Chapter 8, Section 1, and that's going to be really the last of the three chapters about the three branches of government. We're going to compare duties and functions. Let me make this screen with me a little bit smaller. Now, the same standard as what we've been doing. We're going to discuss the judicial branch, analyze jurisdiction and the role it plays in the judicial system, and examine the types of cases that the court system hears. Federal courts, like the Supreme Court, make up the third branch of government. Now, it's not just the Supreme Court, it is the federal court system, similar to how that the executive branch isn't just the president, it is the executive branch system, headed up by the president. Courts hear disputes, whether it's between two private parties, between a private party and the government, or between the United States and a local or state government. There's all kinds of different court cases that can be heard. The court applies the law to the facts presented and makes a decision. The United States Supreme Court is the top of the federal court system. It is the very highest of the federal court system. So you can't go any higher than the Supreme Court. The goal of the legal system is to treat all people the same. And it doesn't always work out that way. And we see that in our world, that sometimes it's not going to be fair and balanced for everyone. But the goal is to do that. Justice is supposed to be blind, meaning that it's not supposed to see race, religion, gender, any of that kind of stuff. The idea of equal justice is hard to achieve, but the courts try to make it as equal as possible. And again, it's not perfect, but that is the ultimate goal. The founders created the federal court system in Article 3 of the Constitution. Remember, we already talked about how the Article 1 is the judicial branch, or not is the legislative branch. Article 2 is the executive branch. Article 3 is the judicial branch. The court system has three levels, with the district courts at the bottom, the appeals court, and then the Supreme Court. And there's courts in between there as well. Our federal court system exists alongside the separate 50 state courts, and each state has its own laws and courts. So when it comes down to it, the court system is very, very complex. There's a lot of different layers to it. It's not just, I'm going to court. It's federal court. Sometimes the city has their own courts. The district has their own courts. The county has their own courts. The federal courts, the appellate courts, the state appeals courts, the federal appeal court. It's just a lot of them. Jurisdiction is a word that means a court's authority to hear and decide cases. If it is something that's out of their jurisdiction, they cannot hear that case. So, like for example, if someone robs a bank in Franklin County, Colbert County is not charging that person with a crime. They're not hearing that case because it happened in Franklin County. It's out of their jurisdiction. Cases involving the Constitution involves people that feel their constitutional rights have been violated. And that's usually going to be when the Supreme Court listens. There's a number of cases. There's one example on the Andy Griffith show, the old show Andy Griffith show, where a woman's upset because she's given a speeding ticket, I believe is what it is. And she says, I'll appeal this. I'll appeal this all the way to the Supreme Court if I have to. And there's no way the Supreme Court would have heard a traffic case. It's just nothing they would ever do. They hear stuff that deals with constitutional rights, basically. So, for example, you had the example last year of the baker, person that bakes cakes and stuff, that refused to bake a cake for a same-sex couple. And both sides said their constitutional rights was violated. The Christian baker said that it was against his constitutional right to bake a cake that goes against his religious beliefs, that he could reserve the right to service of anyone. The same-sex couple argued that their rights had been violated because if they were a heterosexual couple, that person would have refused him a cake. So then that's the idea. It's constitutional issues. Roe versus Wade, which the court case deals with abortion. Plessy versus Ferguson and Brown versus Board of Education deals with racial issues. And so, things like that is what the Supreme Court will hear. Federal courts also hear cases where a person is accused of a federal crime, such as tax evasion. If you're evading your taxes, you're evading your federal taxes, and so they'll hear that case. Federal courts also hear controversies between states. So if there's, like for example, a water dispute where a main body of water is in one state, but it flows into the other. Does that water belong to the state that has the main body of water, or the state that the river or whatever flows into? That kind of thing would be a controversy between states. Federal courts also hear disputes between people from different states. So if you go and beat up somebody in Georgia, and they want to charge you with assault or something like that, well, then he lives in Georgia and you live in Alabama, so both states are going to have to be involved, so the federal courts are going to have to get involved. Suits involving the federal government, such as if you're hit by a mail truck or sue the government, something that's related to the government. Cases involving foreign governments and treaties, things dealing with other countries, are going to be heard by the federal government or by the federal courts. Cases based on maritime law, such as the remains of a sunken treasure ship, and who owns the money, because it's going to be in international waters most of the time. In cases involving U.S. diplomats or people who goes to other countries and has diplomatic relations with other countries, that's going to also be a federal court thing. Relation to state courts. I had to move that because I couldn't say the R. You have two different terms of jurisdiction here. You have exclusive jurisdiction, where only federal courts can hear these cases. You're not going to have where a state is hearing federal tax evasion. They may be hearing state tax evasion, but not federal. Concurrent jurisdiction is shared jurisdiction between the federal and state courts. And this is where the federal and state courts work together. Concurrent jurisdiction. In this case, the person can sue in federal or state court. Either one's fine. And that brings us to the end of section 1, where we discussed the types of cases they can hear, what the judicial branch is, and the role that jurisdiction plays. So let's pick back up with section 2.